Amelia Earhart is often remembered for skies and distance, yet her earliest story holds a quieter contradiction, because she felt most restless on the ground, surrounded by ordinary expectations, while her thoughts kept lifting toward spaces that felt emotionally farther than any horizon. Even as a young girl, she learned how belonging could feel conditional, since curiosity was praised only when it stayed polite, and ambition was encouraged only when it did not interrupt familiar patterns. This mismatch between what she felt inside and what the world expected shaped her attention early, training her to observe carefully, listen longer than necessary, and quietly collect impressions instead of demanding permission. She noticed how rooms changed tone depending on who spoke, how confidence could sound convincing even when it lacked substance, and how silence often revealed more than explanation. While others moved easily through routines, Amelia carried a persistent sense of watching life from a slight distance, not excluded outright, but never fully absorbed, as though something essential hovered just out of reach. This in-between feeling did not make her dramatic or withdrawn, but it sharpened her sensitivity, turning everyday moments into questions she held privately rather than answers she rushed to share. In classrooms, gatherings, and casual conversations, she absorbed patterns quietly, wondering why certain paths felt so narrowly defined, while others were spoken of as impossible rather than unexplored. Adults often praised steadiness and caution, yet Amelia felt drawn to ideas that resisted neat framing, sensing that safety and satisfaction were not always aligned. Instead of rebelling openly, she practiced patience, learning how to appear agreeable while protecting an inner freedom that felt both fragile and essential. Books, observations, and private thoughts became places where her imagination could stretch without correction, allowing her to test possibilities without asking anyone to approve them. She found that imagination did not remove uncertainty, but it softened its edges, making unknowns feel less threatening and more like invitations waiting quietly. Around her, expectations formed clear outlines, especially about what young girls should admire, desire, or prepare for, yet Amelia sensed that clarity could sometimes conceal fear of change. Rather than rejecting these expectations outright, she studied them, curious about who benefited from limits and who learned to live within them. This habit of questioning without hostility became central to her character because it allowed her to remain thoughtful rather than defensive. Moments of loneliness surfaced not as sharp pain, but as gentle pressure, reminding her that wanting something undefined often meant standing alone with it. Still, she noticed that solitude also brought clarity, offering space to hear her own thoughts without interruption or correction. In those quieter stretches, she imagined herself not as exceptional, but as capable of learning, adapting, and enduring beyond what others assumed. This belief did not feel bold or heroic yet, but it stayed steady, like a low flame protected from wind. She watched how confidence was often granted before it was earned, especially to those who matched expectation, and this observation made her patient rather than bitter. Amelia learned early that permission rarely arrives on its own, and that preparation could be an act of quiet defiance. Instead of dreaming loudly, she gathered skills, impressions, and resolve, treating curiosity as something to cultivate rather than display. Humor entered her outlook gently, not as jokes, but as an awareness of how seriously people defended rules they rarely examined. This perspective helped her remain light even when choices felt heavy, allowing determination to grow without hardening into resentment. She sensed that independence was not about isolation, but about choosing which voices deserved space inside her mind. As years passed, uncertainty did not disappear, but it became familiar, transforming from a source of discomfort into a companion she learned to manage. She understood that fear often arrived disguised as advice, wearing concern while limiting possibility. Rather than dismissing such voices, she evaluated them, measuring caution against curiosity with careful attention. Her inner world expanded quietly, shaped by reflection, observation, and the growing realization that not all meaningful paths were visible from the start. She noticed that movement, even imagined, brought relief from the tightness of expectation, suggesting that direction mattered more than approval. This realization did not immediately lead her outward, but it adjusted her posture, making stillness feel temporary rather than permanent. She began sensing that identity was not something assigned, but something assembled over time through small, consistent choices. The idea comforted her, since it meant she did not need to rush becoming anyone specific. Around her, life continued predictably, yet she felt increasingly aware that predictability was a condition, not a promise. This awareness sharpened her interest in learning how systems worked and where their edges quietly softened. She observed how courage was praised after success, but questioned during preparation, a contradiction that amused and unsettled her simultaneously. Through these observations, her sensitivity evolved into quiet resilience, capable of holding uncertainty without collapsing under it. She accepted that not belonging everywhere did not mean belonging nowhere, and this distinction gave her room to breathe. Gradually, imagination connected with discipline, forming a balance that allowed ideas to persist rather than evaporate. She did not yet seek distance or records or acclaim, but she felt drawn toward experiences that demanded attention and presence. In her private reflections, movement symbolized more than travel, representing permission to redefine boundaries without asking them to move first. This symbol stayed with her, subtle yet persistent, shaping how she interpreted opportunity when it appeared. The tension between caution and curiosity never resolved completely, but it became productive rather than paralyzing. She recognized that preparation was not hesitation, but a form of respect for what lay ahead. As her awareness deepened, she sensed that her future would require patience before action and clarity before commitment. Nothing dramatic marked this stage, yet something steady was forming beneath the surface of ordinary days. The sky had not claimed her yet, but the ground beneath her already felt like a place she would not remain forever. When opportunity finally appeared, it did not arrive as a trumpet call, but as a quiet opening, suggesting motion, responsibility, and risk intertwined, which asked her to choose attentiveness over hesitation while remaining loyal to her inward compass. Training demanded patience and humility, because machinery cares little for dreams, and Amelia learned to listen to engines, weather, and limits, translating uncertainty into preparation that slowly reshaped confidence without shouting or applause from crowded rooms. Each lesson stitched calm into fear, since repetition transformed trembling decisions into practiced responses, allowing her to trust process rather than impulse when situations shifted faster than plans or expectations shaped by uncertainty and time. Public attention grew unevenly, sometimes supportive and sometimes skeptical, and she balanced visibility with steadiness, understanding that applause fades quickly while preparation remains. When clouds darken without warning across open skies and crowded runways alike. She discovered that progress invites scrutiny because courage unsettles assumptions, and learning to carry doubt without surrender became another skill, practiced alongside navigation and repair during long preparations and solitary waits before departure windows close. Across landscapes unfolding beneath wings, her perspective widened, revealing patterns of rivers and cities, and reinforcing how small adjustments could change outcomes when sustained by focus over extended distances and hours of attention without distraction. Records mattered less than reliability, yet milestones carried weight, since they opened doors for others watching quietly, measuring possibility against their own restrained ambitions from distant towns and cautious homes everywhere seeking reassurance through example. She spoke thoughtfully rather than loudly, choosing words that acknowledged risk without celebrating danger, because honesty kept courage grounded and useful for younger listeners and wary supporters during uncertain times when futures felt unclear ahead. Setbacks arrived with practical lessons, reminding her that progress involves repair, recalibration, and humility, and that perseverance grows from responding carefully, not stubbornly, to changing conditions over long journeys and shared responsibilities with crews present. Technology advanced unevenly, yet trust formed between pilot and machine through attention and respect, shaping a partnership that rewarded steadiness and punished impatience during challenging passages across unfamiliar routes and weather that shifted quickly overhead. As responsibilities increased, solitude persisted because leadership can be isolating, requiring calm decisions made without consensus while still honoring the people affected by those choices during tense moments aloft and before landings in silence together. She carried hope carefully, treating it as responsibility rather than promise, since optimism unsupported by preparation could mislead, especially when trust followed her name into public spaces and headlines that traveled fast across borders daily. Moments of quiet planning contrasted with flashes of celebration, and she navigated both with even attention, resisting extremes that could distort judgment or intention over sustained efforts required for safety and long-term goals to endure. Her example spread through letters, interviews, and quiet admiration, creating a chorus of possibilities that felt personal rather than abstract to those listening from many places with careful hearts and cautious dreams taking shape slowly. She understood representation carries weight, because visibility can invite both inspiration and pressure, requiring balance that preserves self while serving others across communities and generations, watching attentively for cues about possibility and permission to try. Risk remained present, never romanticized, acknowledged plainly in planning sessions where numbers, maps, and contingencies mattered more than slogans and expectations shaped by experience earned through trial and patience over demanding routes and schedules alike. She cultivated adaptability, knowing rigidity fails under pressure, and this mindset allowed learning to continue even when plans dissolved unexpectedly during extended missions with limited margins for error and changing conditions at altitude daily onward. Partnerships grew from mutual respect, since trust is earned incrementally, and she valued collaborators who prepared thoroughly and communicated plainly under strain across cultures and roles within demanding contexts that left little margin for error. Public curiosity intensified, and she learned to frame stories responsibly, keeping wonder alive while grounding narratives in effort and reality for younger audiences who listened closely for guidance about ambition without exaggeration or fear-induced. Pressure increased subtly, since expectations expand with success, and she countered it by returning repeatedly to fundamentals that foster stability and control during uncertainty and fatigue over long campaigns with demanding logistics and planning cycles. Her calm presence reassured supporters, not through bravado, but through consistency, which communicated seriousness about safety and learning across many interactions and public moments shared widely through media channels of the time and memory forming. She reflected often, measuring ambition against well-being, because sustainability ensured curiosity could continue without burning brightly, then disappearing prematurely under intense scrutiny and schedules that taxed resilience over consecutive seasons of effort and attention daily. As horizons shifted, planning became narrative, weaving roots with meaning, so preparation felt purposeful rather than merely technical for those involved in the endeavor from start to finish and across months of coordination and patience. Encounters with diverse places reinforced humility, reminding her that knowledge expands through listening as much as action, to local wisdom, to conditions that varied widely across regions and contexts visited briefly or observed from above. She resisted myth-making, preferring clarity that honors effort, since legends obscure the work required to repeat success responsibly by future practitioners and learners seeking guidance beyond headlines and fleeting applause cycles of attention that fade. Yet wonder remained essential, balanced carefully with realism, because imagination fuels commitment while discipline directs it safely toward goals that serve many stakeholders over time and changing circumstances, with care and accountability embedded throughout efforts. Challenges accumulated, testing resolve without dramatics, and she met them through methodical choices that preserved momentum over successive attempts and reviews conducted honestly with teams and personal standards applied consistently over years of dedication shown. Her demeanor mixed seriousness with approachability, allowing conversation without intimidation, which strengthened collaboration across differing expertise and backgrounds within projects that required trust and shared accountability through demanding phases of execution and review alike together. Facing uncertainty, she maintained routines that anchored days, because structure creates freedom to adapt creatively when variables multiply and fatigue sets in unexpectedly over journeys with extended duration and responsibility for outcomes shared widely afterwards. Her voice remained measured, conveying respect for limits while affirming possibility, a balance that resonated beyond immediate achievements and circumstances faced collectively by observers and participants across communities listening closely for direction and tone set. In private moments, reflection sharpened resolve, connecting purpose to practice, and keeping ego secondary to responsibility during challenging stretches of work that tested patience and belief in progress over time without spectacle or theatrics attached. The horizon continued inviting commitment, not through promises, but through honest challenges that demanded preparation and care from those approaching it seriously, with respect for complexity and consequence carried forward into each decision made thereafter. Her influence traveled unevenly, sometimes quietly, sometimes loudly, and she adapted communication accordingly without compromising standards of safety and learning. She prioritized across platforms available at the time and audiences she respected deeply overall throughout. Consequences were never abstract, and she treated decisions as commitments affecting many lives and resources across timelines and responsibilities. She acknowledged openly in planning rooms and discussions with stakeholders involved at every stage of progress. She welcomed scrutiny when fair, believing transparency builds trust, while dismissing noise that distracted from work and preparation required to sustain effort over long spans of time and attention without erosion of focus or morale. As momentum built, she guarded humility, since experience teaches that mastery remains provisional and incomplete under changing conditions and technologies evolving rapidly within the field and beyond its boundaries, recognized clearly through practice over years. Her planning notebooks reflected care, recording contingencies and insights, turning reflection into actionable guidance for future attempts, and shared learning within teams that rotated as projects evolved over cycles of exploration and review combined together. She balanced advocacy with restraint, encouraging aspiration while acknowledging costs, which maintained credibility among varied audiences and institutions observing closely from afar through reports and accounts circulating widely during the period of her work. Impacting. As challenges intensified, calm became strategic, enabling clearer thinking under pressure during critical phases of planning and execution that tested limits without spectacle or dramatization of effort before observers and partners alike watching closely together. Her decisions integrated data and intuition, respecting both analysis and experience developed over time through practice and feedback from outcomes observed carefully across attempts and revisions that followed without bias or haste interfering excessively thereafter. Visibility brought responsibility to mentor indirectly, modeling habits rather than issuing directives through example, and consistency observed repeatedly by learners seeking cues about conduct in demanding roles that require care and precision. Daily practice standards. When uncertainty lingered, she acknowledged it openly, preferring candor to comfort, because clarity fosters trust during complex undertakings with shared stakes and shifting variables across phases that resist certainty despite preparation and expertise available there. Her pace remained deliberate, valuing readiness over speed, which protected long-term ambition from unnecessary risk and strain during extended efforts that demanded resilience and foresight over time, without shortcuts tempting though they were to take. Interactions reflected mutual respect as she listened attentively, integrating feedback without surrendering judgment or clarity under pressure from varied sources, including critics and supporters who observed closely through outcomes and results over time, unfolding steadily. Her narrative emphasized process, demystifying achievement and reinforcing preparation as central values for progress under uncertainty and risk, encountered routinely by practitioners across disciplines, learning from example and context over repetition and time elapsed therein. As goals advanced, consequences expanded, reinforcing seriousness without diminishing curiosity about the world and its systems she encountered through travel and study, combined thoughtfully during planning cycles that informed choices moving forward carefully each time. Her resolve matured, shaped by patience, responsibility, and awareness of influence on others, watching closely for signals about possibility and conduct modeled through action and restraint under pressure over many moments and seasons experienced together. The work continued demanding presence, inviting courage tempered by care from those involved in each stage of planning and execution that followed patiently despite uncertainty and fatigue that accumulated over distance and time measured carefully. Her path converged toward a moment requiring synthesis of learning, discipline, and courage without haste or spectacle, but readiness earned deliberately through preparation and reflection over preceding years of effort and balance maintained steadily inside. With focus steady, she approached what lay ahead prepared to commit fully, guided by care rather than applause and grounded in intention formed earlier in quiet years of learning and observation that now aligned with purpose.